my last date with Jean. So watch this space. There may be others, of course. Catherine, thank you. And you've taken a little bit of my first 2 paragraphs, but however, bear with me.
That means we're on the same page.
True, okay. So last year, I was asked to preach at this network conference. And because of the journey I was on with Jean dying, I said that it was definitely not the time, thinking that by so doing, I had avoided the one thing I've always promised myself I would never do. Being the daughter of a theologian preacher and the partner of a woman who would turn the most powerful sermons out week by week, I felt this clearly was something that I wasn't called to do. It was not on my God task, or my agenda. I thought I wiggled out of it very nicely last year, but then Andy, wherever he is, contacted me again, and he made the invitation, and I repeated my refusal. Being a preacher is not my strength. I'm secure in my role as a psychotherapist. I'm at home with the unconscious soul. I sing and I write God songs, and I'm strong when people find me funny. But to preach, no way. It's way out of my comfort zone. Andy then told me that when he invited me last year, Jean had been delighted. She'd always wanted me to write a sermon. So what choice was left to me? I therefore did what my sainted namesake did, like the other Mary. I spoke my yes. But as I begin to write this, sitting in Brockwell Park, my local bit of London greenery and beauty, I'm confronted with insecurity. The page is blank. I feel physical weakness and cold sweat. The waitress brings me a cup of coffee. The mug has a slogan on it. It reads, "Unique Depths." It's the first synchronicity or moment of grace. The first affirmation of God being on this job with me. I'm not alone in my paralysis. All I need to do is start. This serves as an introduction to the notion of there being an inner place of soul depths, which breaks into our feebleness with unique healing grace imperatives. These come to us when we adopt our brokenness and our fears, when we say a yes to them rather than orphan or hide or avoid them. So, in this talk, as Bruce heard, I don't want to call it a sermon, I would like to tell you a story of what I see as the healing phenomenon which Paul flags up in our reading. I would like us to consider our woundedness and the inner soul space and the mending properties of grace through which our thorns in the flesh become potential doors for the Christ unexpected, or grace. These, I think, are the sole precepts which Paul speaks of when he advocates for there being an opportunity of perfection in the weakness. I want us to look at this personally, for ourselves, and then collectively, and to have the bravery to imagine how it might be if we could each take just one little step towards saying a yes to healing something this evening. Paul, we hear, had an ongoing thorn in the flesh, which kept him dependent on this something new, grace. We can wonder what this might have been. In fact, it's good to do this because in considering what ailed Paul, we might come across our own wounding and begin to see it as a hinged door, ready to swing open to admit Christ's essence. Luther and Calvin say Paul's thorn as a temptation to disbelief. Others say that Paul had epileptic fits or some severe physical infirmity, perhaps a defect of sight, from his experience on the Damascus Road. Another view is that his thorn consisted in giving into moods, especially anger, which wounded those around him for whom he would willingly normally give his life. The shame and the remorse of this was detrimental to his mission. It held him back from working only from his own ability. By the nature of my work, I'm in daily contact with people who have lost soul connection. They come to therapy about thorns in the flesh because they are held back. They live at breaking points with abuse and accidents, relational breakdown, failure and grief, and the whole gamut of experience which makes up the more difficult or shadow side of life. My clients and my students have shown me that when they stop fighting the difficulty and begin to listen what is underneath it, the unique depths of it, they come in touch with something new and fresh and creative and alive, something which is growing. And this loves them into well-being. I've been made to walk this talk myself over the last year, when there's been nothing but loss. The grace which has emerged from this, from my deepest sorrow, has been unexpected. And the condition of receiving this is the ongoing price of suffering, bearing with the wound, knowing that new strength is on offer here. Within the church, we've learned to call this love that my clients discover Christ. Sadly, sometimes our hope in him is mightily jaded and tired and unrefreshed by the liturgies that are intended to join us to him and sustain him. We who have the grace giver as our way and our light, who sing the Christ songs week by week, have often lost his real presence. The inside-out ways of healing and restoring that should be right in our midst. We resist him. We act out. We say no to what is on offer because, put simply, we've lost the plot. We've lost the God plan. We spend huge amounts of energy maintaining an appearance of strength because there is no safe place for the potentiality of vulnerability or need. There's nowhere for that to be looked at and explored. But this inner place is not weak, though we can feel it. It is not weak or impoverished. This inner soul place is vibrant and life and graced, but largely ignored, even in Christendom. I love myths, and an old Sioux tale talks about the Creator gathering all of his creation and saying, I want to hide something from humans until they're ready for it. It's the bit of them that makes me real to them. It's too precious for them to find it too easily. So Eagle said, give it to me and I'll take it to the moon. The Creator said, no, one day they'll get there and they'll find it. So the salmon said, I'll bury it deep in the bottom of the ocean. But the Creator said, no, they'll find a way of getting there. Too easy. Then the buffalo said, I'll bury it on the great plains. But the Creator said, they will cut the skin of the earth and find it, even there. Then Grandmother Mole, who lives in the breast of Mother Earth, and who has no physical eyes, but sees with spiritual eyes, she said, put it inside of them. And the Creator said, it's done. The Roman Catholic Catechism says, soul refers to the innermost aspect of a person, which is of the greatest value in him, by which he is most especially made in God's image. Soul signifies the spiritual principle in humankind. From the therapy world, Dr. James Hillman, founder of archetypal psychology, speaks of soul in this way. By soul, I mean, first of all, a perspective rather than a substance. a viewpoint, a way of seeing things, rather than a thing in itself. My personal and professional experience shows that people recognise this term and can accept it as being the right name for this core essence of human beings. Gradually, they begin to put together the strange idea that through pathology or brokenheartedness, soul has the opportunity to be heard. When the thorn of the flesh conditions break down the coping mechanisms, then the defences are no longer work and something new is needed. It's at that point love can break through. There, grace takes over. My clients don't have the name for healing experience which comes to them from their depths. They falter to find the words for it. They say things like, it's something else, and they look embarrassed and fumbly and they haven't got words for it. Or they say, it feels like I've come home. But they can find a way to actually say what it is, but they recognise the love. And they begin to trust this, and so they soften. Instead of resisting, they soften and find themselves resourced and strong enough to meet external demands. One of my clients said, and I have permission to use this, I think my soul is the invisible, life-giving part of me. When I'm with my soul, I'm not alone. Things will emerge that can be of value to me in a way that they cannot when they're hidden. When I know these things, I can embrace their strength. I wonder how we can look at our thorns in the flesh here this evening, knowing that as we do this, we're moving gently towards what feels as if it's only wounded, but which, if we just start, will become something else. I wonder how it would be if we could soften and reflect on the wounds of our own MCC congregations. I wonder how it would be if we could think and reflect on the often difficult network that we are in. We can be difficult. That's okay. And if we could soften to listen wider to the Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Church, UFMCC, and the strong but occasionally thorny relationship that is part of our belonging to each other. If we could bear to soften and let the wound in. It's no easy task. It has to be a willful asking for healing, and it has to have intention about it, and a preparedness to soften into that receiving and giving love. It's just a whisper away, if you will but start. How much easier it is to be suspicious of our own wounds and to protect them outwards through put-downs and gossips and withdrawals from our brother or sister whose thorn is much spikier than mine and more visible. If wound or thorn is the way to grace, then dropping down into the deep places of our Christ self, we have a duty as much as we can to make space for our own hurts. Because as we do this, we prevent ourselves from making other people carry them. Our call to each other is to be carriers of Christ's grace with its all-is-well quality of comfort and presence, rather than deliver our own personal wound defences. To say again at this moment, I say it because I need to say it again, I'm on one of the most enormous journeys of my life. Anyone who knows Jean and me knows that our love is one of soulmates, and that shall always be. Clearly, the events of the last year have helped me learn that while this statement is true, it doesn't stop me having joy and purpose, and even finding love again with Elaine. These are the gracious gifts and graces that God gives from my loss. I have to work the grief weakness and wait for the next bit of grace and strength to come. It does. I'd like us just to stop for one moment and to take your hand, one hand. Go on, move. You can move, Church. It's okay. Stay up. I'm not going to do drama therapy. Okay, okay. Give it a look. I'd like you to imagine, I don't want you to think too hard, but in this hand is what appears to you as a thorn in the flesh right now. Don't think too much, just let it be held. Hold it. It's going to be okay. And take your other hand, as if it were your deep Christ soul. There's no rights and wrongs about doing this. Just let the two hands meet. They all know what to do. And when your hands meet, just for yourself, is there a word or an image? Or maybe there's a blank that is as yet to be filled. Just receive, if you will, that first step. My grace is enough, it's all you need. My strength comes into its own in your weakness. Once I heard that, I was glad to let it happen. I quit focusing on the handicap and began to appreciate the gift. It was a case of Christ's strength moving in on my weakness. Now I take my limitations in my stride, and with good cheer. These limitations that cut me down to size, abuse, accidents, oppositions, bad breaks. I just let Christ take over. And so the weaker I get, the stronger I am. I'd like to finish with a reading. When I was wondering how to finish a sermon, I've never written a sermon before. It was nice to be ending it, but I didn't know quite how to do it. And talking to Jean, as I do, and she said, at 3 o'clock in the morning, just go through my readings. So, always obeying Jean, even at this stage, I did. And I found this, and I'd like to finish with one of her friendly readings that we had every week in MCC South London. Your strength in my weakness, Lord. How often do I remember that? Walking over the common in the bright sunlight. Everything was right, and I was even remembering to say thank you to you. But then the rain. The weather changed and I shivered. Lord, when things go wrong, help me to remember the good times. When my life with you, with my fellow Christians, hits rock's bottom, and I find it hard to take, stay with me. When I'm hurt and disappointed by outside events, by the way others behave, let me be honest to look at myself and admit that the fault often lies inside me. Then let me feel you near. And then, when the sun comes back again, then I know you were with me through the pain. Lord, I know you are with me.